Hey everyone, Zach Mason here. Welcome back to the channel. We do have a lot to talk about today. I'm sure you're aware, as everyone is aware, of the horrible things that happened in Israel this week. The invasion by the Philistines from the Gaza Strip and the massacres of innocents that occurred. It's just heartbreaking, and I know everybody is torn up about it and even angry. And I also know there's lots of channels out there and teachers and people talking about the connection of prophecy and how this is the beginning of fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Although not everybody's clear about exactly how. Well, if you're new to this channel, what we do on this channel is we examine biblical prophecy and current events and even dreams and visions that God is giving many believers, and we connect the dots and we try to go deeper. I am not here, I don't do this channel to get fame. At least I hope I don't. Anytime I detect that might be creeping in, I try to get rid of it. I'm here because God has compelled me to teach. He's called me to teach. And I put puzzle pieces together and I study and I try to go deeper and understand what is really going on. What is God doing? I am not content to make one conjecture after the other, day after day, and then just hold on to that. I want to really know what God is doing and saying. And when it comes to what is happening in Israel, there is a prophetic connection, and it is deep, and it is incredible, and there's a lot more to think about and know that you haven't seen, I believe, elsewhere. At least I haven't seen it elsewhere. The three questions you should be asking yourself, I'm sure you're asking yourself, is what does this mean? What does this event mean? What is going to happen next? And what does it mean for you? What does it mean for me? How does this apply to me? Well, first, let's talk about what does it mean, period. What does it mean in the prophetic timeline and world history and God's plan? What is he doing? Well, first I want to point out, there are just a lot of things. One more sign, there's just one more sign that we're in the last days, that all of the quote, enemies of God's people are like coming back at the same time. They're rising up at the same time. We have the Nicolaitans are already back. If you haven't heard about that, I've got other videos where I talk about it. The Gnostics are back. Egypt is rising up. It's going to rise up soon in what I believe is coming again. Persia is back. Babylon's back. Assyria is back. Amalek is back. And now the Philistines are back. And the Philistines are attacking Israel once more. And does anybody remember, if you know your Bible, you'll answer this question pretty quick. Who was King David's general during his fights against the Philistines? Does anyone remember? It was Joab, right? Joab. So King David, who is symbolic of the Messiah, there's many things he did that's symbolic of the Messiah, was fighting the Philistines, and his general's name was Joab. Does anybody want to take a guess at the name of the defense minister of Israel right now? Yes, it's Yoav, which is Joab. It's the same name. These things are coming full circle. God is doing so many things to show us this, and we can even point at Benjamin Netanyahu's name. Benjamin means son of the right hand. Netanyahu means gift of Yahweh. Son of the right hand, gift of Yahweh. Now, that is not an endorsement of Benjamin Netanyahu as if he is the Messiah or he is the gift of God, although I do believe Israel has been given a gift of sorts from Yahweh and having him as their leader right now. But his name prophetically points to the Messiah, as does King David's. The name Dawood, or David, actually means beloved. And so you have Joab leading the armies of Israel again now, led by the son of the right hand, gift of Yahweh, which is pointing forward to the son of David, Jesus. So prophetically speaking, though, the enemies of God's people will not be finally defeated until Yeshua, Jesus, returns, which is what we know. Now, beyond that, there are numerous passages that talk about a final judgment on Philistia. Philistia. And if anybody's asking me why I keep referring to the Philistines, it's because the Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip are the biblical Palestinians. The quote-unquote Palestinians living in the West Bank are not. Those are children of Lot. Those are Ammon and Moab, okay? They're Jordanians. But the ones in the Gaza Strip, which is the area that is in the news right now, those are the original Philistines. The Hebrew word for Philistine is Palestine. Palestine. It's the same. It's the exact same. So there is no difference. This hasn't changed. The cities of the Philistines in the Old Testament are the same cities that are there now. In fact, Gaza was one of the cities of the Philistines in the Old Testament. So this is, the Gaza Strip is Philistia. Okay, now, so we have at least three passages of importance here in the Old Testament that are end time passages talking about a final judgment on Philistia. Let me read to you from Jeremiah 47. It says, "Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines before Pharaoh attacked Gaza." Now, most people read that line and they think, and they automatically, because they're not reading carefully, they check, so this was given before Pharaoh invaded Gaza. So this must be a prediction that Jeremiah made about what was going to happen when Pharaoh invaded Gaza, right? And so immediately we dismiss it. We don't give it importance because we think, so that already happened. Well, no, wait a second. What direction is Pharaoh from Gaza? He's leader of Egypt. Where does Egypt lie in relation to Gaza? Isn't it south? It is south. But what happens next in verse 2? It says, "Thus says the Lord, behold, waters rise out of the north and shall be an overflowing flood." So actually now we realize that this is not talking about what Pharaoh is going to do to Gaza. Jeremiah is simply dating it. They did not have, in the Old Testament times, the concept of BC and AD when dating years, because that system came up to date things from the birth of Christ. No, the way they dated things back then was to mark things in terms of relation to events, to known events. And so in this case, Jeremiah is saying this word came to him before, probably right before Pharaoh invaded Gaza. It's just simply a dating line. But it's a future end time prophecy that hasn't happened yet. Well, I think it's happening now. I think after almost 3,000 years, Jeremiah 47 may be being fulfilled right now. Let's look. "Behold, waters," remember water is always a symbol for God's power, for his force. "Behold, waters rise out of the north and shall be an overflowing flood." Israel lies to the north of Philistia, of Gaza. "They shall overflow the land and all that is in it, the city and those who dwell within." Israel is preparing for a ground invasion right now. "Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall wail." I know some of you who are watching this skeptically and say, "Oh, this has happened so many times." No, you need to listen to the whole thing here. "The men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall wail at the noise of the stamping hooves of his strong horses, at the rushing of his chariots, at the rumbling of his wheels." Now, that's contextually, Jeremiah would have needed to understand this for his time. It's talking about military forces, cavalry. Well, modern cavalry is tanks, and they are going within lots of tanks, and they have wheels, right? "The fathers will not look back for their children, lacking courage, because of the day that comes to plunder all the Philistines." Okay, so this is predicting that the men of Philistia, the men of Gaza, will be so self-interested that they'll abandon their own kids trying to get away. Does that sound unbelievable? From a people that just, murdered babies and innocent elderly people and raped a bunch of young girls? Doesn't seem unbelievable to me. Continuing verse 4, an important verse here. "To cut off from Tyre and Sidon every helper who remains. So that is a curious phrase, because in Isaiah's day, or Jeremiah, this is Jeremiah, in Jeremiah's day, there was no alliance between the Philistines and Tyre and Sidon where they were helping each other attack Israel. We don't have record of that. Today we do though, because Tyre and Sidon today are southern Lebanon, which corresponds to Hezbollah. And right now, the talk is about Hezbollah entering this war and attacking from the north against Israel. That's Tyre and Sidon. So it says to cut off from, let's exchange Tyre and Sidon with the word Hezbollah, to cut off from Hezbollah every helper who remains. So to cut off Hamas from being able to help Hezbollah. For the Lord shall plunder the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Caphtor. Caphtor was I forget, oh boy, is it Crete? Might have been Crete, I'm not sure. Forgive me for not remembering that detail. Caphtor is the ancient name for one of the islands in the Mediterranean. If it's not Crete, forgive me. I'll have to go look this up and correct myself later. But it is known that the Philistines were not Canaanites, but they came from Caphtor, from this island in the Mediterranean Sea, thousands of years ago. And the people there today are genetically descended from them. Important line, baldness has come upon Gaza. Ashkelon is cut off. Ashkelon was also a city of the Philistines. With the remnant of their valley, how long will you cut yourself? O you sword of the Lord, how long until you are quiet? Put yourself up into your scabbard, rest and be still. How can it be quiet, seeing the Lord has given it a charge against Ashkelon and against the seashore? There he has appointed it. So long war is not going to be short, and that's what we're kind of seeing. But baldness has come upon Gaza. The Hebrew word is literally baldness, right? Like my head, sorry. That is, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli leadership have indicated that is what they're intending to do. They are flattening all the buildings of Gaza systematically. And they're intending to come in with their tanks and totally flatten every structure, every home, every tower. They're not leaving anything. I don't know if you understood this is the goal or not. They're talking about removing Hamas. Okay, eliminating, annihilating Hamas. Yet, the Palestinian people in Gaza, the Gaza people, are Hamas. There's no distinction. You see how they're rejoicing around the world, their migrant populations, about what Hamas did to the Jewish people just now. And you see them celebrating the streets of Gaza when they bring back naked hostages. Israel knows this. So they're saying we're annihilating Hamas, but what they mean is they're annihilating the Gazans. They're removing from them, or they're going to remove them. They're either way, they're going to make the land bald. They are determined that the Palestinians will never again live in the Gaza Strip. At least they've stated openly that they're intending to completely raise and flatten the north part of the Gaza Strip, which would include the city of Gaza, which technically, when it says baldness has come upon Gaza, doesn't technically have to refer to the whole strip. Okay, it could be just the city of Gaza, because in the Old Testament, Gaza was a city. Anyways, this is possibly being fulfilled now, and it is a little early. Like, I'd be a little hesitant to say for sure Jeremiah 47 is coming true until we see that it's happened. However, there's something that gives me pause and reason to think that this may be now. And that is in Amos chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. It says, "Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4." That's an important line. For 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4. "I will not turn away its punishment, because they took captive the whole captivity, to deliver them up to Edom. But I will send a fire upon the wall of Gaza, which shall devour its palaces. I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod," that's another city in the Gaza Strip, "and the one who holds a scepter, the ruler, from Ashkelon. I will turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, says the Lord God." So it's referring to there was 5 major cities of the Philistines, and it named all 5. Now, Ashkelon, I understand, is outside currently the Gaza Strip, although it's being attacked with rockets from Gaza itself. That's a puzzling piece I'm still working on. And this idea of delivering up the captives to Edom, that is another puzzling piece I haven't quite fully understood yet that I'm researching. But here's what I note. When I read, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4, I will not turn away punishment. I have always read that poetically. And I think most scholars have done that, of noting that it just seems like, okay, Gaza's done repeated transgressions, and so 3 and 4, and you add those together, and it's 7, and it's completeness, or there's a lot of ways to look at it poetically. But now, with what's happening, I've looked at it in a different light. And I just reminded myself, went and researched a little bit of the history of the conflict between Hamas and Gaza and Israel. And while there have been little flare-ups here and there kind of ongoing, there have been, up until now, there have been 3 major breakouts of conflict between Hamas and Israel. 3, exactly 3. 1987 was the first Intifada, 2000 was the second Intifada, and 2014 was the third one, so to speak, which involved a lot more of rockets, and each Intifada got worse and more aggressive. Okay, so there's a building process of the conflict, and now 2023 we have the 4th, which was the most terrible of all. And now God says, I will not turn away its punishment. So I have strong reason to believe that this is being fulfilled right now. And if that's the truth, then there's another prophecy above that in Amos, talks about 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, which is something I'm going to talk about at the end of this video. Also, I'm going to read Isaiah 14, 28 through 32 is another prophecy about the destruction of Philistia, or the Gaza Strip. It says, this is the burden which came in the year King Ahaz died. Okay. Again, a dating word, a dating phrase, trying to give the time. Do not rejoice, all you of Philistia. Do not rejoice, all you of the Gaza Strip, because the rod that struck you is broken. So what that means is it's saying, Gaza Strip, don't rejoice because Israel is broken, because Israel is the rod that struck them. Okay? Don't rejoice that Israel is broken. For out of the serpent's roots will come forth a viper, and its offspring will be a fiery flying serpent. That could be referring to missiles, coming in, bombs. The firstborn of the poor will feed, and the needy will lie down in safety. This is referring to Israel. Okay, it's saying you're rejoicing because Israel seems to be broken, but I'm telling you the firstborn of the poor in Israel will feed, and the needy will lie down in safety. I will kill your roots with famine, and it will slay your remnant. Right now, Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. No medicine, food, water, electricity, nothing is being allowed in or out. Egypt tried to bring in some trucks, and Israel threatened them and bombed right next to the trucks to tell them very clearly, turn around. There will be no food coming into the people of Gaza. Whale Gate, Cryo City, all of you of Philistia are dissolved. Okay, dissolved is an interesting word. I don't believe that all of the Philistines are going to be necessarily eliminated, because I think some of them are going to flee into Egypt. For smoke will come from the north. Again, a reference to the attack comes from the north, Israel. Missiles, bombs, and no one will be alone in his appointed time. What is that referring to? Your appointed time is your death. So saying no one will be alone in their death. Meaning you're going to die in mass numbers. Groups of you will be dying at the same time. What will they answer the messengers of the nation? Which messengers is like ambassadors. What are they going to answer the messenger, the ambassadors from the nations? That the Lord has founded Zion, and the poor of his people shall take refuge in it. Okay, so the message is, the land is Yahweh's, and he has established Israel, and don't come against her. Okay, is what it's referring to. Now, that said, those are some of the biblical passages I believe apply right now. I know there's a lot of speculation about the war of Gog and Magog resulting from this, and I believe that is a possibility as well. Although I have other interpretations about the war of Gog and Magog, which we'll talk about. I don't know that that's a legitimate... Anyways, this war is going to get bigger. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Whether that's Ezekiel 38 yet or not sure. But these passages clearly seem to apply and are being fulfilled. Now, what else does it mean? Well, this is representing judgment all around. So now, bear with me. I understand. I have full sympathy for the innocent lives and families of people who were killed. But we do need to understand some things. In some places, judgment targets those who are dishonoring God and disobeying him the most. So I'm going to play for you a video. Hold on, I got to get some water. This video circulated. You may have heard about captives taken from an outdoor party. What they're calling an outdoor party. I kept seeing reference to this. And then, what was this outdoor party? And why are so many of the attendees like very well dressed, handsome young women and men who seem like they're posing on Instagram as influencers? So researching more, I found, this wasn't just a cookout. There was a rave, a massive all-night trance peace rave is what they described. It's basically very worldly, young Israeli men, guys and girls, 20, 30 years old, were dancing all night in drug-induced states in front of a Buddha idol for peace. Half-dressed. Okay, let me play you a clip. Notice the Buddha idol at the very beginning. So what you see there in the sky behind them, this is literally 2 minutes before a lot of those young people were killed. I saw this and I just... Have they not learned? We have the Old Testament. Did they not learn with Moses? Don't go into the desert and dance in a drunken stupor in front of an idol. God doesn't like it. Don't do it. Yet that's what they were doing for peace. When they say peace and safety, destruction is at hand. Oh, it breaks my heart. I keep seeing that young girl at the end in my mind's eye, just thinking how oblivious to her own death she is, just dancing in the world, in love with the world, oblivious to the threat that looms. This is a picture of the church. This is a picture of people everywhere. Loving the world, wanting peace, calling for peace, dancing the night away. The night is the time when Jesus is not with us. But at dawn, the return of the sun, right as Jesus is about to return, judgment comes on these worldly believers who are dancing in oblivious to the threat that is right behind them. Breaks my heart. Of course, while Hamas was used as an instrument, as a tool of indignation against these young people, there was also innocents killed, babies, etc. You've all seen the stories. But Philistia, now the Philistines are now going through their judgment. So they're being judged much harsher than Israel was. Israel's judgment has begun. The Philistines' judgment has begun. The Taliban in Afghanistan supplied weapons to Hamas to help them do this. And they rejoiced and complimented Hamas and told them, great job on doing this. The very next day after they said that, a massive earthquake hit Afghanistan and killed 2,000 Afghanis and injured 10,000 more. And that was just the initial report. Who knows how big it actually is, right? So, all these things tell me, judgment has started, and the timing on this tells me there's something significant in the timing, because this happened right after the end of the Feast of Tabernacles, the Festival of Sukkot in Israel. You had Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then the Festival of Sukkot, Tabernacles, and right as that week is ending, this attack was launched at sunrise. There's something prophetic in that I need to understand that I have not fully understood yet, and I'm researching it. But it's telling me this is a marking moment of the beginning of Israel's trouble, of the nation of Israel's trouble. And there's going to be lots happening, in my opinion. And most people understand that. I want to point out one other thing, because this struck me this morning. People are outraged by there was 40 babies that were shot in the head, stabbed, beheaded, burnt. At least 40, they say. And that struck me. The number 40 is the number of testing or trial. 40 years in the desert, 40 days in the desert. But people are rightfully outraged by that. And then it's ironic to me how many people are outraged by that. And then you have liberal celebrities online, on Instagram and elsewhere, on Twitter, claiming that this isn't true, that this is fake news, that they haven't seen any pictures of it, and trying to deny it happened because they're realizing how heinous it is to kill a baby like that. And these liberal people are demanding proof that babies have been killed because they know it's terrible and they don't want the Palestinian people to be blamed for that. But they support abortion. All around, nobody is outraged by abortion. You got 40 babies. 65 million babies have been dismembered in the United States. And in Israel itself, at least 700,000 babies have been murdered. 700,000. This was just 40. Yet we're outraged. I'm outraged by it. I'm not diminishing this. It's terrible. No baby should be killed. But I'm also outraged by Israelis who are outraged, who support abortion. It's just so hypocritical. Why is this worse? It's the same. Israel's response to Roe versus Wade being overturned in the United States was to liberalize all of their abortion laws and take away all restrictions so that people, even Jews from America, could come there to get abortions easier. So Jeremiah says that we owe 2 for 1. If 700,000 is the number of Israeli abortions, then they owe 1.4 million. And 40 babies is just a drop in the bucket, I'm sorry to say. It breaks my heart. I'm not trying to be callous. But I'm pointing out hypocrisy and why judgment is happening. It's happening not just for Israel, for Philistia, for Afghanistan, and it will happen for the United States. We've been talking about this for a long time. This is coming to the United States, and we need to be ready. Are you ready? Let's talk about what's coming next. That we know, Psalm 83 predicts that Turkey will unite Muslim nations against Israel at some point to help, quote unquote, the children of Lot. That's Psalm 83. The children of Lot would be West Bank Palestinians. We've talked about Jeremiah 47 and these others about Philistia. Isaiah 18 is a judgment against the United States. I outline this very clearly, analyzing the Hebrew, in my book, Revelation Unfolding. And I've done a video on this channel as well, if you want to go watch that. Many people believe it's about the United States. If it's not the United States, there's really no other nation it could be. But it says, Isaiah 18 says that when we see a banner on the mountains, or raised up on the mountains, that following spring, the United States will be filled with dead bodies that are not picked up or buried, both young and old. The banner on the mountains most likely refers to a Palestinian or an Israeli flag beginning to wave in the West Bank. So that's my best interpretation of it, that if we see, and I think it's a Palestinian flag, when we see Palestinian flags going up on the West Bank, which would be from a two-state solution, that's when judgment comes to the United States, or begins in the United States. A war begins in earnest here, which will start with a civil war, which we've talked about. I'm not going to go in more depth on that right now. Will in a minute. So now in the news. All right, here's what I'm understanding. I've been watching Israel for a long time. I watched the intifadas. I've watched them I watched them in 2005 remove their own citizens from the Gaza Strip at gunpoint to give the Palestinians in Gaza full autonomy over their own territory. I've watched them try to give them work permits and bless them and help them and give them economic aid even. And I've watched the Gazans just spit on it and continue to shoot rockets at them and do other things and call for their death. And I've seen polls talking about how 80% of Gaza Strip Palestinians want to see all Jews massacred, men, women, and children. So Israel knows these things, and they also know the writing is on the wall with Iran. That Iran, it's just a matter of time before they become a nuclear power, especially since the United States isn't really helping right now to stop it. And they know Iran has promised to use a nuclear missile against Israel as soon as they can. So Israel, I think, has been shifting in their spirit for a while as to possible solutions. They're realizing the writing is on the wall with Iran, and they're realizing that the situation with Gaza and the West Bank Palestinians, they're never going to change. They're not going to let go of their hatred, and they're sick of it. And I think they've gotten to the point where they just have said some serious changes. We may have to do some hard things and take some big risks on the world scene to get rid of this problem once and for all. And I think that's their mental state. There's some interesting things, there's theories going around that Israel kind of let this happen with this massacre. Amir Sarfati reported something that unusual about intelligence failures, but he's since clarified that that it wasn't deliberate, that there was just people dismissed it. And you could chalk that up to God allowing this to happen, God blinding people and making them make bad decisions to allow this to provoke what is happening now. Because that's part of how God judges, is he blinds people to danger. Now, some other things we need to understand is, I see Hezbollah right at least at this time, that in the north, which is funded by Syria and Iran, is hesitating. Hamas expected them to jump right in, and they're not. But Israel is like ready, like they're poised, like they're saying, Hezbollah, we're gonna get you, we're coming right after you. And I think Hezbollah is like, I don't know if they're just waiting to build up more power, give themselves time, or if they are like, yeah, we know Israel's serious now, and we're not stepping in. We want to preserve ourselves because we can't win. I'm not sure which it is, but Israel's almost wanting to pick the fight with them. Israel wants to fight them. They're like, come on, like any excuse, they're going to go after them because they want to eliminate all threats once and for all. They've been saying for months, they've been predicting for months that if Hezbollah attacked them, they've been warning Hezbollah directly, if you attack us, we promise you, this is going to be the final war with Hezbollah. And that shows their mental state. They're done with this constant stress. They're going to destroy all their enemies with everything they've got. And they're almost suicidal in that, in the mentality. Like it's either let's get rid of them once and for all, or let's die trying, because we're done with this, is what they're saying to themselves. Now, you should know that Turkey is the primary funder of Hamas, not Iran. Iran hasn't historically had strong financing connections to Hamas. They're focused on Hezbollah in the north and Lebanon. Turkey and Qatar are the primary funders of Hamas now. But reports are like flying out. Immediately we're flying out. Iran did this. Iran armed them with drones. Iran did all this. And yet that evidence is not forthcoming. And the United States is even reporting that they're suspicious of that. That they are feeling like they watched the interactions and communications of Iranian leadership as this happened. And they're noting that all the Iranian leadership was surprised. They were surprised by the massacre, which is a strong indication they didn't know about it, right? So, what does that mean? Well, I have so let me, okay, Turkey funds Hamas. Let's leave it at that. And that's all we know right now, except for the fact that Israel wants to eliminate Iran as a threat. So is it possible that they're intentionally spreading fake news about Iran being the source to end all of their enemies at once? Maybe. And I have a dream to report from You Be Ready that hasn't been published, which may indicate that. Now, I want to say that Erdogan of Turkey is the main critic of Israel right now, and he's talking about planning a confrontation with Israel over humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. So he is heavily criticizing Israel about their treatment, the bombardment of the Gaza Strip, their intent to flatten it, and the lack of water and the lack of electricity. And he's sending a boat full of humanitarian aid, and that boat, Israel's not going to let it through. And if they try to go through, if that boat tries to go through the Israeli lines and call Israel's bluff, they're going to find out Israel's not bluffing. And they will sink the boat. They will sink the boat. And that will be an attack on Turkey. Remember Psalm 83 about Turkey aligning these Muslim nations to attack Israel in the future. That war's never happened. I also noticed one other thing. This is just kind of a side note. This is actually reporting this even calls into question my main thoughts about who Erdogan is. But I'm going to note, because I am not married to my own theories. I believe Erdogan is the most likely candidate, and I have believed that, of the Antichrist, based on biblical descriptions of the Antichrist. But I note that the term prince of the people to come, prince, is used in Daniel to describe the little horn. And Erdogan's not technically a prince. He's a king, technically. And I note You Be Ready has had several words, clear words, about a young prince beginning to make power plays after Erdogan won his election by a narrow margin. There's a word I talked about in a video a while ago where he said Act 1 is the president of Turkey will win his election by a narrow margin. That happened. Act 2, he said, was watch Europe for a young prince who will be trying to consolidate his power or make moves for power. I forget the exact wording. Well, Prince Edward of England, who has no power, met with Erdogan a couple of days in secret. It wasn't secret that he met, but the meeting was secret. The meeting was private. He met with Erdogan a couple of days before Hamas launched this massacre in order to discuss defense. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows really what they talked about. But I note that happened. Turkey funds Hamas. They're the primary funder, and Hamas can't act without Turkey's permission because of that funding, right? So I just note the timing, and I don't know what that means. I don't even know how Prince Edward could possibly, he has no power at this time. Doesn't mean anything. I have been very incredulous about a possible Antichrist being part of the royal family of England. But I'm humble enough to know I could be wrong, that maybe things just haven't been set up yet in a way that they would have power. I don't know. Anyways, all I know is that meeting happened. And he technically would be a young prince because he is still a prince. And he's the youngest brother of Prince Charles. That makes him a young prince. Okay. Now, I want to get into some other news things before I move on from the news. I talked about Benjamin Netanyahu, who has stated that he wants to flatten the northern part of the Gaza Strip at a minimum. Okay, so that would fulfill the baldness coming to Gaza. I'm going to tell you that we know, I mean, it's already happening, but the initial days, just like September 11th, everybody's sympathetic with Israel. They're illuminating their buildings in every country, and the Eiffel Tower in France, and etc., and the Arch of Titus in Rome with the Israeli flag, which is beyond ironic. It's beyond ironic that they've illuminated the Arch of Titus in Rome with the Israeli flag, when the Arch of Titus was built to commemorate the destruction of the temple in Israel and the enslavement of the Jewish people as they were brought into the Roman Empire. I mean, it's very ironic. Nevertheless, it's just a matter of days. It's already happening, where the world's going to turn against Israel once again and forget the massacre and say, "Oh, you're being too mean. You're being too mean to the Philistines." You know it's going to happen. There are doubts about Iran's involvement. The United States is voicing doubt. Europe's voicing doubt. Okay. And along those lines, this is what I want to share. Israel is, I think, desperate to end all their threats. And they want to do it in one fell swoop. And so I think they're desperate to paint Iran as the one behind this, even though it doesn't quite make sense and there doesn't seem to be evidence of it. Okay. The other day, You Be Ready emailed a number of us about a dream he had back in 2018. And he hasn't published this, but I'm just going to read to you what he said. He said, "I saw thousands of missiles raining down on Israel. It was horrifying, and I could not make it end." He said his wife kind of, what he says, "My wife is going to type it up because she was in bed when I suddenly woke up still in the dream." Like he woke up and was still having this vision. He was awake, but still seeing it. He said it was horrifying, and I could not make it end. I was describing to her everything I was seeing. If this is that, I mean, if this war that's beginning, if this is that which I was shown, then get ready to witness the most horrible death and destruction the world has ever seen. Here's a key. He said, "I saw Israel pose as Iranians, using a submarine to sink a U.S. warship to draw us into the war with Iran, which will not end well for the USA. I pray this is not that. Then I saw Iranian sleeper cells activate and set off the suitcase nukes already here in the United States. Brothers, time to pray for the remnant to step up to the plate." This is the first time I've been able to pin down the timing of the suitcase nukes, which has been seen by many people in dreams and visions and prophetic words. But, and there's a lot more to this, and I'm going to have to expand on this in another video. But basically, if this was a dream from God, and for everything I know about You Be Ready and my communication with him, he's a sincere man of God. This dream would seem to be from him, and so from God. So if so, it means that we're going to see Iran sink a submarine, an Iranian submarine sink a U.S. warship, and that this is going to be a cause to make the United States super angry and declare war against Iran and go to war against Iran, which then would end with Iran activating their sleeper cells and setting off these suitcase nukes in some of our cities. Keep in mind, suitcase nukes are not massive Hiroshima-type bombs. They're smaller tactical nukes, which only destroy like a little neighborhood, like a small area. Okay. I mean, not super small. They're still nukes, but they're not massive like you would think. So setting off suitcase nukes would be a very, very bad thing and kill lots and lots of people. But it isn't like the total destruction or flattening of a city. For example, people have seen that 3 of them, I think, go off, or 3 or more of them go off in New York City, and it doesn't end New York City. It just takes out a part of it. Okay. So there's something else that he had several words. Now this applies to Damascus. Actually, before I get to that, let me point out something else. So I'm noticing that Lindsey Graham, Dan Crenshaw, and Nikki Haley, and some other neocons have already been calling for us to attack Iran with no evidence. These are warmongers who are really working for, I hate to sound cliche, but our industrial military complex, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, these companies, they want money, they want profit, they want to sell weapons. So they're happy to cause wars to do that. And that's, so these 3 are already calling for us to attack Iran, and we don't really have evidence yet. So imagine if an Iranian warship, Iranian submarine sinks our warship, a battleship or something. We would declare war on Iran. Okay? People would be very angry. So what You Be Ready saw was Israelis posing as Iranians to provoke that, because they would be, I guess, in fear that they couldn't conquer Iran and everyone else at the same time on their own. And maybe they were hoping that we would get involved already, and they're thinking they have to do this to seal the deal, because otherwise they're going to be in trouble. We'll see. We'll see. And I have no idea how long it would be till that happens. Could be very soon. Could be a little bit. But as I'm recording this, Hamas has called on Muslims around the world, all organizations and countries, to launch attacks everywhere against all Western interests, including Israel, tomorrow, which is Friday. So we'll see what happens. If more things like this happen, obviously anger is going to go up, right? Anger is going to go up. Now I want to read one last thing, a word about Damascus. So I'm noting that You Be Ready, he's got 2 different words from, I think, 2018 and 2018 about Damascus. Now, I don't know how much confidence I have. I still, I go back, I believe very strongly You Be Ready is hearing from God, but then and these are very specific predictions. So I'm just going to read it to you, and you're aware of it, and we'll see what happens. But here's what it says in a word called the spoilers that he received on April 9th, 2018. It says, "My hand is moving the spoilers into position on the mountains of Israel. I have shown you the rockets packed with poison leaving Damascus, heading toward my people Israel. Many will die in this attack, and Israel will avenge. Samson will be used against Damascus, and the city will be no more." The stage is set. Okay? So Samson is the name of Israel's nuclear project / nuclear option. The reason is they basically, their policy is, we have nuclear weapons, but we're not admitting it. And Samson took out his enemies, the Philistines, by pushing the pillars of the temple he was in, the pagan temple, aside and causing the roof to come down and kill everybody inside, including himself. So the Israel government named their nuclear project the Samson option, or Samson project, because the idea is, if we become fearful of that we're going to be exterminated, like something is going to happen that we feel like is going to threaten all of our lives, and like we might not survive as a nation, we're just going to go ahead and nuke everybody, or nuke whoever we think we need to, and we don't care. And if we kill ourselves, we kill ourselves, because we're going to die anyways. Like, they're determined to make people pay for killing them, and that's just their position. And I noticed in another word, March 9th of 2018, in a word he received called "It's a Trap." He says, Israel will be attacked from all sides and is forced to destroy Damascus with nuclear weapons, because the rockets that rain down are chemical, and many of my people perish. Israel will defeat her enemies at great cost to life, but she will enlarge her borders and will declare peace and safety. The world is inflamed with hatred for Israel, including America. So Damascus, Syria, in these words, both the words, what he's saying is Damascus is going to launch weapons or missiles bearing chemical weapons against Israel, and a lot of Israelis die. And Israel's response is to nuke Damascus. So is that going to happen? Well, let's go to the Bible and let's read. There are two words against Damascus that I have here. Isaiah 17 verse 1 says, the burden against Damascus. Behold, Damascus will cease from being a city, and it will be a ruinous heap. This has never happened. Damascus is one of the oldest cities in the world. So they have to be completely destroyed by somebody with essentially a nuclear bomb, because it says the cities of Aurora, which are like near to it, are forsaken. They will be for flogs, which lie down and no one will make them afraid. So this means this place is going to be totally abandoned. Only animals, only flocks of sheep will be wandering around there. Nobody's going to live in it. That seems like it has to be nuclear. And I go to Amos, and I see in verse 1, chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, it says, thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus and for 4. And I note again, I always interpreted that poetically, but now I'm thinking again, there have been 3 separate wars where Damascus, meaning Syria, has attacked Israel in war, major. Now there's been ongoing, they claim Syria backs Hezbollah like Iran. So anytime there's missiles exchanged or soldiers killed or things between Israel and Hezbollah, if you read timelines, they kind of blame Syria for it, but it's really technically Hezbollah, Tyre and Sidon. Okay. But when it comes to things that could be counted easily, there's been 3 major wars so far where Syria attacked Israel. The War for Independence in the 1940s, the 1967 war, and the Yom Kippur War in the 1970s. So those are 3 transgressions of Damascus against Israel. Launching chemical weapons through missiles against Israel and killing many Israelis would be the worst of the 4, and it would be a 4th. So it makes sense. For 3 transgressions of Damascus and for 4, I will not turn away its punishment, because they have threshed Gilead with implements of iron. Understand that Gilead is Galat in Hebrew, and it is the area, maybe the Golan Heights, or and even south, you could say even south a little bit of the Sea of Galilee. They have threshed Gilead with implements of iron, which would be missiles. You can just see missiles hitting the ground, okay, and spewing up dirt. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which would be the leader's name, the king's name then, which shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad would be the son of Hadad, which again would be a reference to the king of Damascus, which would be, in this case, Assad. I will also break the gate bar of Damascus and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of Aven, which also can mean the valley of iniquity. And the one who holds the scepter from Beth Eden, the people of Syria shall go captive to Kir, says the Lord. I haven't researched all of the implications of that and those place names, but generally, this has not happened. And Damascus still exists, oldest city one of the oldest cities in the world. So this is a future, being totally destroyed by fire. Seems like a nuke. And that lines up with what UB Ready is seeing. Again, time will tell. Time will tell. Okay, so now, and this war, I think, is going to get bigger. I mean, I think there's more to talk about. I don't have enough solid information to tell you how this entire thing is going to play out yet. We'll see as we go. But what does it mean for you right now? Well, first and foremost, if you haven't already, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. We are in serious times. And while it's over there right now, it is coming here. We need judgment too. The United States is set up for judgment sooner rather than later. We need to be preparing. We need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Scripture commands us to do this. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You need to prepare. You need to prepare physically. We've talked about this. Store up food. But we also need to get our houses in order. And I've talked about this endlessly. See God daily. Repent daily. If you're worried about your family and loved ones, that's what you need to focus on with them. Don't try to convince them that we're in the end times. I mean, if they're arguing with you about that, don't try to convince them about LGBT, the truth about that. Don't try to convince them about jabs or other medical things. Focus on getting them into the spiritual disciplines. That's how you save them. Get them to abide well with Jesus, to renounce the world, to repent of the world, to confess sins daily to God, to be following Jesus Christ, to be in daily prayer, to be in the Word every day, to be in fellowship and community, to be increasing obedience, to be increasing their faith or trust in the words God has spoken. This is what will save people. And ultimately, that's if you are prepared yourself, that's what we need to be doing. We need to be reaching the lost. Reaching the lost. We need to be trying to bring as many people into the kingdom as we can, and we need to be strengthening as many sheep in the kingdom who are already in the kingdom as we can. We need to be strengthening and expanding the kingdom everywhere we go. And the primary way to do that is by teaching the 3 spiritual disciplines of prayer, Bible, and fellowship. They seem so basic, and yet so few Christians do them well. Yet they are the source of God's power in our lives. They are the source of strength. All right, so anyways, this video has gone on a little longer than an hour. I'm sorry about that. Try to keep it shorter, but this is a huge topic, and there's so much to talk about. Keep watching. No fear. Have faith. Trust in He who has His eye on us and shepherds us so well. Have a great day.